Hey guys, my name's Kiddo Crew. I haven't posted in a long time. I've been doing this thing where I've been playing TTS a lot, and I figured people got sick of hearing about my games of Blooded, so I put it out there and I played 10 games of Warpcoven, and this is sort of my wrap up video about doing that. I'm going to go over the games real quick, and we'll go over a couple things I found, a couple early game things that I have found to like, a couple combos that I don't think that I want to go over, um, and try to give a couple tips on this army, on this force for Killteam. This is Warpcoven. These are not my models. These are Claws Trees models. They look absolutely beautiful. If he's got these in real life, they're freaking amazing. Um, so yeah, I'm gonna go over a couple things. So first game was against Higher Tech Circle. I think I played this game pretty poorly. I got very lucky that my opponent misplayed their secondaries or tac ops. Um, I really think that Recon's just so much stronger than security right now. That even on missions where Recon doesn't seem like the greatest plan, it's still better than security. Um, you This team has a lot of primary play with ephemeral instability to slow down charges and dashes, but being able to score recon on your own terms instead of waiting for your opponent to try to can you break this um, isn't really great. Also, security has this problem where it's like, okay, I want to hold this zone, and your opponent gets rewarded for being aggressive against you just by breaking your points. So aggression, like all out aggression, already a thing this team sort of struggles with a bit, but it's sort of an interesting give and take of it. I think Recon's just a lot stronger. Game two is into Phobos. My opponent mispositioned his Reaver after the 4-inch pregame dash and let me take a flank. I flat out just moved my Soul Reaper cannon up from a vantage point, got a shot on his Reaver turn one. It was a mistake. It determined the entirety of the game, gave me the entire right flank, and that's a mistake that you just can't make against Warpcoven. They have the AP shooting, long range shooting to put some hurt on, and I'll talk about some of the combos of it later. And not from the sorcerers. That's something else I found. Game three was into Death Guard. Death Guard are already slow. APL3 is fine, it's great, but they move 2 circle. You cut their dash down to 1 inch, and you cut the legs out of the army. Even if they bell to increase 2 or 3 of their operatives to 2 inches, so normal movement, it's not enough to contest midboard primaries. It's not enough to position. So it just let me have free run of the board. Game four was into Navy Breachers. They shoot and kill really hard. They don't have any free mission action things. They can scout you out and reveal you with their little cat. So being able to get the alpha strike on them is actually pretty difficult unless you're hypermobile. They only have a couple of melee threats, but those melee threats hit like a truck. And with stims, they're actually a pretty resilient little team. It's pretty rough. I think you just outplay the primary and then, again, go recon, focus on the primary. I lost this game because I opted for a 4-up invult instead of collecting a loot point, and that literally was a 2-point swing that determined that game. Oops, happens. Yeah, focus on the mission. This team definitely wants to do that more than anything else. Game 5 was into Void Dancers, and this definitely convinced me that taking 6 Zangor is the key to fighting Void Dancers. They're a very tough team. They're hyper mobile. Bringing Ephemeral instability brings them back down to the level playing field. Them having a fusion pistol and a neuro pistol can definitely put the hurt on. You have melee operatives that can kill clowns. You need horns on your Zangors, though, to have a chance to do it. Because a single Jess can ruin a Zangor. But if you have a crit, getting 5 damage in, Sorcerer comes up and cleans up the kill. They don't have a lot of models that can just run up and one-tap a Sorcerer, even with the fusion pistol. They have one, but then they're hyper close. You need to be positioned to make sure you capitalize on punishing that guy with the fusion pistol. Charge him, kill him dead. After that, I played Kroot. I just chose Violence. Flux Blast was sort of a whiff for this game. I had a pretty good move dash with the Fly Sorcerer to get some early shots off. Double saving in cover is really good for Kroot. Ephemeral Instability just completely messed up his entire deployment plan, and he played against Warpcoven before, but TLDR, this team relies on Ephemeral Instability to control the map presence, and it let me get some blast kills and some double kills where most opponents would try to prevent that at all costs. It just created a situation where if he didn't, then he doesn't even have a chance to contest the primary the turn 2 if he loses initiative, especially not with more than just like one of his dogs, for example. After that, we faced Breachers again, and I literally just did what I talked about. I focused on the mission, used instability, got primary points, 3 sorcerers, 6 Zangors, go recon, get the points you need, and play the primary around them. You can slow them down. Yes, they can move dash, but they can't move dash and shoot. They can't move dash and collect a point. They are a 2 APL team, and if they're wasting their 3rd APL and getting a mission action to just even keep up in primary, that's a solid win for us. Game 8 was into Commandos, and this was the most interesting game I had doing this series. He did the forward deploy with the dynamite, and it created this question of, do I want to counter that with my Fly Sorcerer, or do I want to counter that with someone on engage around the corner that can reach him, Time Walker can reach him, etc.? Or do I want to play defensively? And the dynamite's definitely a threat. AP1 with the blast, definitely kill Gores, probably put some hurt on the sorcerers, and they have enough operatives to play the mission. And my opponent played the mission very well. That initial threat put me sort of back in the corner a little bit, and I tried to position up on the flanks and won some of the flanks. But that initially made it so that I was definitely not in position where I want to be turn 2 on. He 4-2'd me primary turn 1. We 3-3'd, then I got 3-2, and then 3-3'd again. But his secondaries outscored mine, and so not being able to push hard on primaries won this game for him, and he played it really well. It's one of those questions of, do you want to risk a sorcerer to try to go kill that orc? Because if you send a Zangor and you lose initiative, the Zangor is going to die, and he's going to just scratch and probably not even be injured, because the Zangor just doesn't quite do enough damage, and there's a chance that the Zangor dies in return. It's sort of a risky play. The other option is to send the Fly Sorcerer or Time Walker Sorcerer, where you have range to get to them. And I'm not sure what the answer is, frankly. It's a conundrum that I have in the game, and it's pretty interesting to see such a veteran team, because it's one of the first teams that came out with Killteam, give me one of my most sound losses in this little series. Game 9 into Phobos again. This was less about my opponent mispositioning and really just choosing a bad terrain setup. It was on the mission with the 4 objectives down the middle, and the 2 objectives that were most central to the board were absolutely just out in the open. There was no way to get a barricade there. There's no way that there's not a position where each side has a vantage point to shoot there. They're just blatantly out in the open. And as Phobos, you can do pretty well, but you need to plan those grenades, those smoke grenades, to take the point and then move off. And because it was capture, he had to sit on the point to take it. And neither one of us wanted to risk that. I won initiative and ephemeral instability, so he couldn't even reach the far corner objectives that are very hard to reach. Time Walker and Fly let me get those, so I got 3-1 primary first turn. Then 4-1, and I 4-1'd him the rest of the game. And it doesn't matter what secondaries are. If you're only scoring 4 out of 16 primary, you're not winning that game. So I think having an emphasis on primary now that the missions have changed is a definite boon for this army. Last game was into Hearthkin Salvagers. This was an experimental game. My opponent's experienced. I played him before. He's definitely beaten me before. And I never cast Ephemeral Instability because I thought it would not affect their dashes. It does. And going back to the Death Guard thing, you reduce that army to a 5-inch move all game. They're APL2, so they can't even move, dash, shoot because they're APL2. They can do a free shoot action with the deploy, but then you're making them burn CP for one operative to shoot all game. And on Into the Dark, you just sort of charge them with melee people and choose which recon you want to score passively. They don't have the melee threat to take out a sorcerer one shot. They don't have the bodies to block enough against a 9 operative team. And our sorcerers can take out 2-3 models even with tanking Magna Rails to the face. Invul saves came into play. His dice were a little cold, but even then, the plasma being 4/6 means that really you just need to block 1 or 2 hits and you're okay. Because them rolling more than 1 crit, rolling 2 crits and a hit, you get a 3-up save, you take 12 damage, go down to 1, and you're still alive and able to kill a 7-wound model, no problem. Especially if you take Tempiric, you heal yourself up, say 3 or 4 damage. Now you're at 5, and you're charging and killing, and they don't have the melee punch to really get at you. So it was a really interesting game. Taught me a lot about the team. Hearthkin Warriors can definitely have they want to shoot. And even though they're in the dark team, they want to play open board 1,000%. So those were my games. If you're going to check any of them out, I really suggest the Orc one. That was probably one of the most interesting back and forth games that I've had. And it was a lot of fun, despite losing 19-14, I think. Very smart play on my opponent. As far as this team goes, there's a couple things that I think that are traps, and a couple things that I have grown to rely on too much, probably. I was really trying to extend out and use some of these other sorcerers that don't mesh well with the typical meta, but it's just these 3 sorcerers playing into the meta all so much. One is the Immaterial Flight. Fly is just really good. Even on Into the Dark, being able to fly over through operatives and barricades and things is really, really useful and underutilized, I think. The other one is Mutant Appendage, free mission actions. Sorceress Ritual is the only of the faction tac ops that you might want to take, and even not on every mission. And being able to move, dash, Psychic Ritual, and Ephemeral Instability all in the same turn without needing the icon is an amazing boon. And speaking of which, I found that, and my last boon that I take is Time Walker a lot. The extra inch of movement lets you get to places that most teams just can't get to, turning point 1, and it lets you pressure from a different angle that people have to now readjust for. Especially since you're using instability to make them even slower than they're used to, so their response time isn't as quick unless they're preemptively seeing how you're going to move, which could be a thing. Most of this team is telegraphed, but it's still very solid and reliable. The other 2 that you might want to consider bringing is Empiric Ward for the 4-up invul and Crystalline for the 2-up armor save. Those 2 are really the only ones I really enjoy taking. I tried the Incorporeal Sight. The Flamer Pistol just let me down every single time. You're very rarely going to get Torrent off in a situation that you'll get more than 1 model. On Into the Dark, it's nice to have because natural lethal 5-up, but it's just not appealing to me. The other thing is that Doombolt feels like a trap every time, unless you're comboing it up with the other powers to get full rerolls to shoot. It just feels really, really bad. Really hard to justify a 3/3 weapon with no AP. It does Mortal Wounds too, so it's a 3/5 gun. Sorta. There's just too many times where I've done 2 to 4 damage with it and the shots get blocked. It's very frustrating. Doombolt needs something. Twist of Destiny, I never even considered casting because it just ends before it matters. Weave Fate, I also never casted once in the 10 games. As far as warp fire spells go, teleport is the one you take for it. You take the warp portal. Infernal Fire, I'm sure, has some uses. Firestorm is a meme at this rate. It's just not worth considering unless you're trying to waste an activation. But there's so many more uses for Warp Portal than Firestorm. Firestorm, even though it's an indirect full board weapon, it's just not good. 5 attacks on 4 is 2/2. Like, even guardsmen aren't afraid of that. So I don't know what to say about that. It needs something. So those 3 boons: the Time Walker, Mutant Appendage, and the Immaterial Flight are definitely the boons I would go to consistently. I took Avian Talons and Warp Swell and Incorporeal Sight. I think Warp Swell is only useful into orcs where you have 5/6 to push the minimum damage to kill orcs. But outside of that, these just don't feel great. Avian Talons, if you're taking Avian Talons, you might as well just take a Kopesh and have relentless 5-ups, lethal 5-ups. It's just, and then do something else with it. Warp Swell you might want to have on your roster against orcs, but that's about it. The Temperic Discipline has a heal, has instability, which I can't praise enough, and it has Flux Blast, which is a shuriken cannon that has shuriken catapult that has blast. So in Into the Dark, it's got lethal 5-up. It's got a good blast radius. It doesn't have AP, but it has respectable damage that someone can't just ignore it. And a lucky shot can definitely kill a Marine if they're not on their toes with their saves. So that's covering the boons. I really like playing my Zangors pretty aggressively. I might use 1 or 2 to score points. I have the sword here for cool points. It's almost never the option. Maybe into Vet Guard or Novitiates, or I really don't know what else. Anything that's over 10 models, maybe you take the sword. But other than that, you just take the mace. Lethal 5-up and brutal means you're punching really hard. It was really common for me to take Gilded Horns on normal Zangor fighters to give them a single lethal 5-up. That helps them push through some damage output. Plus, it makes, if they get a hit and a crit, you just hit them first and it will kill most standard non-melee operatives. So they're really good. If you're taking 6 Zangor, I feel you take the Horn for the increased movement speed, because 1-inch movement on all of them. And it creates one of those backline objective holders that can just sit back and loot your home objective and participate in the team all game. And you're not wasting a sorcerer on it. The banner is something I took in a couple missions for the 3 APL, because it counts as 3 APL on a point. I think in missions where someone can play the mission as well as you, I think you take the banner to contest different objectives pretty well. It let me pull off a couple cheeky plays, but it's very situational. So if you're going to default at all, just take a Zangor fighter with a Horn, and you should be good to go. So 4 Zangor fighters, the Horn, and the Zangor champion, and that's a pretty solid supplement to 3 sorcerers. Outside of Flux Blast, our only real shooter is the Soul Reaper cannon. It needs strats, it needs buffs, it needs something to be mega effective, but you can push it there. Double firing with this thing is absolutely not a joke. AP1 with 6 shots can burn through even intercessors. And I'll talk about a couple combos I found. And keep in mind, yeah, these are turn 1 combos, but a lot of the game is prediced on having a turn 1 plan and then trying to follow through with your tac ops turn 2 onward. And I think having a turn 1 plan where you can have these multiple threat angles is definitely a viable option. And I'll discuss some of these trade-offs that you want to go with. So very commonly, you'll take 3 sorcerers. It just is, this is the way. Sometimes you may want to swap in a Soul Reaper Cannon for one of these sorcerers. This is a hot take, but he is the gun that you want to bring. The Icon Bearer is nice to have extra casts. AP1 Bolter can get Ceaseless, is definitely nothing to scoff at. But unless you're facing something like Kroot or Phobos, where all their guns are 4 damage, you are only going to take the Soul Reaper Cannon in most matchups. It's usually the only one worth taking over a Sorcerer. And the reason why you might replace it that way is so that you can stay with Recon Tac Ops. Warpcoven have a tactical ploy to replace a Tac Op with another one available from your deck. And you can replay it and try to score points differently. So if you took Seize Ground and you can't reach that objective to seize that ground, you can swap it for Hold the Line and try to keep them off your half of the lawn. Which sounds great, but if you're playing Recon, you're already consistently playing towards those objectives anyway. And you're not reliant on pushing your opponent into a zone or controlling a zone against your opponent harder or controlling the center line. That's not exactly where you want all of your operatives to be all at once. So I think that Recon plays into this team's strengths a lot better. And that's why I would take the Soul Reaper Cannon maybe over one of the Sorcerers. You will always take a Sorcerer with Temperic, sometimes 2. My suggestions are the Fly Sorcerer and your Mutant Appendage Sorcerer. Those would be the 2 that I always have Temperic on. And part of the reason why is the ability to do the move dash, use Temperic, Ephemeral Instability, and do Sorcerer's Ritual all at once, or loot, or whatever the mission action is. The free mission action is definitely something that helps. Gives you a pseudo 4 APL model that does all your utility work, and is definitely no slouch in melee with Relentless in combat. The other one is the Immaterial Flight. Having Fly and the ability to do the blast attack with Flux Blast is just a threat you need so that Horde teams respect your reach. How many times I got that combo off? 1, where I moved, dashed, and then fired, killed a model, and then Capricious Plan to be concealed behind cover. I think I did that twice out of all 10 games. But if you don't have that threat on the board, they don't need to respect your reach. And that is something that you need to enforce to be able to control the map. That is one of the 2 plays that this team needs to have in its mind. Because being able to move, dash to a point and then blast whatever, way to stay on the point, is something really important to this team. And then if you do get the pregame dash, you have a 12-inch threat. And then if you can get to, like here, now I'm threatening all this side of the map. As well as anything that tries to come over here or here. It's just a big threat range that you need to have. And if you can't push someone into that corner, being able to control where they go becomes more difficult. Having this on the board is almost a necessity. Having an additional source of ephemeral instability is also really important into teams that, one, will either get the initiative, force initiative, or that can get an angle on your sorcerer that's trying to do all the mission actions. The other combo that I really like that I didn't play as much is the portal combo with the sorcerer. This takes some dedication, and there's 2 ways to go about it. One, you can either go keep your guy unengaged from a safe spot and move your sorcerer up to be within 3, like so. He's within 3. Let's change this to a 3D measurement. And then I can throw him to be within 6 inches. So 6 inches from there is this line right here, up here. We'll draw there. And so as long as I'm touching that, it's not wholly within, it's just touching. So he can be all the way up here. If I chose Fortify, I could have a barricade right there. So that now he's a 3-up, 5-up in cover with really strong vantage and threatening a very good amount of my opponent's board. The other play is if there's a spot where you have cover already, if you can slide him in here, you can go infiltrate, keep him concealed, teleport him there, and now he's in a position where he doesn't even need to move. He can just switch to engage and let it rip. So any opponent that tries to go onto this objective has to try to do it from conceal or has to do it from obscurity and be on like this edge. And creating these zones where your opponent can't comfortably sit in is what this team does really well. And it couples together with instability really, really well. Someone pointed out in me talking about these combos that yes, these are turn one combos. That's very true. Because after turn one, having a set in stone plan is not a thing. There's so much in this game that can go wrong. You really got to start playing it by ear and being ready to adjust for the game. Last thing I want to touch on is the shooting profiles for the sorcerers. You have a flamer pistol option. I think if you take it, you take it on one of your utility sorcerers. I was very underwhelmed by it consistently. The sorcerers can't double fire it either. The sorcerers have to choose a different weapon each time they fire. So it's not very impressive to shoot on any instance that's not Into the Dark. So taking one on Into the Dark against lower wound models, Hearthkin, Vetguard, Blooded, etc., definitely viable. Taking one on open board into some of those teams as well is viable, but you're still not going to get many kills out of it. And it's a situational power at best. It's a situational gun at best. I really like keeping your sorcerers as melee monsters and having some utility firepower in the back pocket is really the way I enjoy playing it. And that's my take on the team. I had a blast doing this. After this, I'm doing Exaction Squad, and we're going to be seeing what we can do with it. I do not think Exaction Squad is in a great position. If anything, I would relate them to sort of where Phobos was before Phobos got the Vanguard buff. Probably a low 40, high 30% win rate. And yeah, I'm not looking forward to these games, especially with Thug Wars about to come out. But we're going to see what we can do. I don't think I'll record videos for that because, as you can see, my recording software is just a little bit laggy on here. It's smooth on my screen, but probably a little laggy on the video. And those are a couple things that I found. I probably am forgetting something. Forgive me, I'm out of practice with this. I had some frustrating nights with OBS and my recording software. So we're going to be trying this out. I think I'll only do these for the big collection games. I'm not going to do this every game. I'm not going to record every game I have. But I'm going to try to get some of this info out there for different teams and different play styles and things that about the teams that at least I find personally. If you have any questions, comments, or want to vote on the next team, go ahead and comment below. I'll respond to everything as long as I have consciousness. And looking forward to hearing from you guys. Until next time, have a good one.